I arrived late. Not fashionably, so just enough to be noticed. The Merritt estate stood like a monument to curated perfection, draped in gold and ivory tones that shimmered under the coastal Oregon sun. Everyone was in white and gold, polished, coordinated, pre-approved by Evelyn, my mother. I walked in wearing a muted gray dress, the only note of dissonance in their orchestrated harmony. Evelyn's eyes skimmed me, lingered a moment too long, then shifted. "Calla," she said, as if reciting a name she once read in a book. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You've come. How?" Thoughtful. Nova stood nearby, wrapped in chiffon and flattery, already surrounded by cousins and acquaintances. "She made it." Nova chimed, lifting her champagne glass. "Everyone, this is my older sister, Calla. You remember her, right?" A few heads turned. Polite nods. That was all. "Quite lucky to be here after all that," someone whispered behind me. I didn't turn to see who, but the chill reached my spine. After all that still followed me 16 years later. Gideon, my grandfather, reached out, pressing my hand briefly. His eyes soft, steady, spoke the words he didn't say. I held on to that for a second too long before Evelyn called him away. I moved through the party like a shadow, always there, never seen. Later, just before the cake, I stepped outside. I needed air, maybe distance. The breeze off the Pacific was sharp, cutting through the polished stillness inside. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Your accident at 16 wasn't your fault. Your family knew the truth." I stared. The message burned through me, hotter than the July sun overhead. I scanned the lawn. Laughter. Champagne flutes. A distant cousin giggling near the koi pond. No one looked my way. I tucked the phone into my clutch, heart thrumming. A prank? An old friend stirring the past? But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The scent of lilacs twisted into the smell of antiseptic. In an instant, I was back in a hospital bed, neck braced, ribs taped, Evelyn standing stiff at the doorway. "You'll be fine," she had said then, "but we're not discussing what happened. Ever." Nova's laugh pierced the present. "Remember when you crashed and ruined Easter?" she called out to someone. Classic Calla. People chuckled. I stood frozen. Back inside, nausea rose like a wave. I hadn't touched the cake, hadn't spoken more than 3 sentences all night. Later, when the house emptied and the gold napkins lay crumpled, I passed the kitchen on my way to get water. I stopped. Evelyn's voice, low and slurred. She should have stayed home that night. I told her. Lucien's voice answered, quieter. Everyone was scared she might survive. I didn't breathe. The ice in my glass melted as I stood frozen in the hallway. The way they said it, rehearsed, like they'd said it before. It wasn't that they hid the truth to protect me. They buried it to protect something else. Or someone. By the time I reached my car, the July evening had deepened into coastal darkness. Fog hugged the road like a secret. I pulled into my garage and reached for the napkins in the glove box. That's when I found it. An envelope. My name on the front. Calla, I owe you the truth. Well. The handwriting was clean, practiced. Inside a letter. No return address. No date. You were never supposed to be blamed. The report was altered. Someone was paid to make it disappear. I read it twice, then again. Lucien? It had to be. Why now? The phone buzzed once more. No message this time. Just a voicemail icon. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Not yet. I sat in the driver's seat, the letter open on my lap when I heard the sound. Tires screeching. Not outside. Not now. In my head. The flash came like lightning, sudden, searing. Headlights. A sharp curve. Brakes screaming. A car coming fast. Too fast. But the shadow behind the wheel. It wasn't who I remembered. I gasped, the paper slipping from my lap. My chest clenched. I slid to the floor of the garage. Cold concrete against my knees. The smell of motor oil. One thought broke through the panic. What if I've always remembered it wrong? I hadn't slept since the letter. I'd reread it a dozen times, trace the slant of the L, the hesitation in the ink where the pen had pressed too long. My gut said Lucien, but I needed more than gut feelings now. I needed records. I needed proof. The hospital's online portal offered nothing. My name pulled up error messages. No records found. Not even billing history. I drove down in person, still in my gym hoodie, hair pulled into a knot. The woman at reception scanned my ID, then looked up, startled. "That's strange," she said, eyes flicking back to the screen. "It says your ICU file is in restricted archives. I can't access it." A nurse walking past caught sight of me and froze. Her lips parted as if to speak, then clamped shut. She turned and walked away fast. Another admin leaned in behind the desk, voice low. "Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie, Miss Wren. Ask less, heal more." I left the hospital boiling inside. Ask less? For years I had asked nothing, had swallowed the official story like medicine. Not anymore. That night, my voicemail lit up. Just one sentence. "You don't know everything." I kept it safe. I knew the voice. Harper Quinn. Harper and I had once been mirrors, inseparable. But after the accident, she'd disappeared from my life, no calls, no visits. I'd convinced myself she was just another person I had imagined wrong. I texted back, "Come over." She showed up in worn jeans, hoodie sleeves pulled over her palms. Her face looked older than her years, but her eyes still had that same quiet defiance. "I wasn't sure you'd answer," she said, handing me an old spiral notebook. This used to be Nova's. The pages were covered in doodles and class notes until halfway through. Then a shift. Nova's handwriting turned sharper, erratic. She never saw it coming. That's the best part. "Roland says it's all cleaned up. No way anyone finds out." Harper pulled a photo from her coat pocket. "This was taken the night of your crash." It showed a car near the bend in the road. Roland's vintage Cadillac. My stomach flipped. "Lucien called me 2 years ago," she continued. "Drunk. Asked if I still had the diary. Kept saying something about wrong girl, wrong car. Why didn't you tell me any of this?" Harper looked down. "Because I didn't know who to protect anymore. But you were always kind." She wasn't. I sat in silence, trying to fit the pieces together, as if the puzzle image had changed while I wasn't looking. The next morning, I drove to Gideon's. His garage was half storage, half sanctuary. I placed the notebook and photo on the workbench. He didn't flinch, just nodded slowly, then motioned me over. From beneath a pile of towels, he pulled out a dusty camcorder. "Neighbor gave me this years ago. Said it caught the tail end of what happened. I made a copy. Never showed anyone." The footage was grainy, time-stamped from a nearby security camera. It showed a car skidding off the road, mine. But the brake marks looked too sharp, too clean. I took the footage to Miles Bastian, a former video forensics guy Gideon trusted. Miles shook his head after 10 minutes. "Someone re-edited this, frame by frame. The timing's off. This was altered." As I walked back to my car, my phone vibrated again. Nova's voice in a voicemail. "Stop digging. You'll make things worse for yourself." Worse than what? That evening, I visited Thea Camden, a retired nurse who now lived in a quiet home near the hills. She opened the door slowly but smiled when she saw me. "I remember you," she said. We sat by her kitchen window as the sun dipped low. "You were so small, barely breathing. They didn't want the surgery. Evelyn and Roland said they were letting fate decide. But Lucien, he forged the signature. Risked everything." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you say something back then?" She lowered her gaze. "Because they said if I talked, they'd destroy me. Back home, I dug out my childhood photo album. Near the back was a missing page. When I remembered clearly, it had held the picture of my first car with the key taped beside it. I rifled through my junk drawer until I found the key. Cold metal, slightly rusted. It didn't match the ignition I remembered. I held it, trembling. If I wasn't even driving, who was? Miles's office always smelled like old books and sharper truths. That morning, it was lit only by a desk lamp and the blue glow from his laptop screen. I handed him the insurance paperwork Harper had found, the one with Evelyn's forged signature, claiming I had died. He read in silence, jaw clenching. They filed this days after your accident, he said. Claimed you were permanently incapacitated. It funded the remodel on the estate's West Wing. I felt no surprise, just confirmation. I don't want to drag them into court, I told him. Not yet. He leaned back. Then what? I want them to say it out loud. I want them to feel it. I want them to be seen. Miles nodded slowly. There's no grace after exposure. You're burning the bridge. Some bridges need to burn, I said. They lead to nowhere. We outlined a plan, one that would be impossible to walk back from. Harper agreed to manage the technical side. Lucien, from whatever hole he was drinking in, offered the files he'd saved. We would stream it all. Evelyn's signed denials of surgery, doctored footage, false claims. Make it honest, Gideon said that night on his porch. Even when it hurts. The reunion invitation came in 2 days later. A healing evening at the Wren estate. Evelyn's attempt at control, wrapped in velvet. The room shimmered in gold, lit with candles and pretenses. Relatives clustered around white tablecloths, their smiles tight, their gazes darting. I stood near the fireplace, holding the remote trigger in my hand like a match. Then I pressed it. Across the room, Harper gave a barely perceptible nod. The live stream went live, unlisted, private for now. The first file played, a scan document, Evelyn's signature beneath the line labeled, refused consent for surgery. Audio followed, Thea's voice, steady, regretful, confirming Evelyn and Roland's visit and their refusal. Murmurs rippled. Then came the footage, a side-by-side playback, the original surveillance video Gideon had hidden, and the manipulated version that had circulated after. One showed hesitation, the other intent. Nova turned pale. Roland gripped his glass, so tightly it cracked. I almost believed it, I said aloud, stepping forward. They told it so well. But memory doesn't vanish. It bleeds. At that moment, Harper hit the upload command. Everyone's phones vibrated at once. Aunt Lacey gasped as her screen lit up. What is this? Roland stepped forward. Enough. Turn it off. Gideon stood from his chair, his silence louder than any voice. Roland froze. Evelyn's face didn't change, but her voice cracked. We protected you. That's all we tried to do. No, I said. You silenced me. Protection without truth is control. Nova's voice broke. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think you'd survive. I didn't want to believe it was real. Aunt Lacey rose slow. We knew. Some of us. We just hoped it'd stay buried. The final file loaded. The fraudulent insurance claim, Evelyn's forged signature, filed 1 week after the crash. A quiet ding punctuated the room. The live stream ended. Outside the mansion, the sky was dark. No one spoke. Later, I sat on Gideon's porch, the tea in my hands growing cold. He joined me without a word. After a long silence, he said, They'll call you cruel. They won't understand. Peace costs pain. I nodded. I didn't do this for revenge. I just needed to stop waking up angry. My phone buzzed. A text from Nova. I want to talk. I owe you that much. I didn't respond. Not yet. Not tonight. As I stood to go inside, another vibration. Unknown number. You exposed them. Good. But I have something you missed. About the night before the crash. I stared at the screen. Who are you? I typed back.